This, a decade and a half after Gianni Versace's murder, was a testament to the attraction of the murder house. There is no question that Americans are fascinated with murder houses and always have been. After a murder hits the news, people are seemingly drawn to the scene of the crime. One of the most common post-murder images on the news is of the curious gathered in front of a house, sometimes holding a vigil in remembrance of the dead. Some may be there to comfort survivors, and sometimes friends and relatives comfort one another. Neighbors often join those who have traveled to come see the crime scene. Eventually, the number of people in front of the home will dwindle, but the murder house will always retain a certain stigma and attract attention long after the vigils end. Nowadays, websites are devoted to murder houses, with aficionados often checking in and telling of recent visits and observations. But what makes anyone want to go and look at a murder house after the police tape has been removed and the reporters have moved on to other stories? It is hard to say. Americans have a fascination with crime. True crime programs on television are quite popular, and there is always a certain amount of drama in any murder case. What would drive someone to kill another person? What if the accused didn't do it? Imagine the horror of being charged with a crime you didn't commit. What about the unsolved crimes? If the murderer is still out there, will he strike again? Each murder seems to raise questions like these and more. Once the crime scenes have been studied and the trials completed, all that remains for the curious is the murder house. This book is a collection of 29 well-known murder houses from around the country. They run the spectrum of time, from the 1830s to the 21st century. Some were home to famous people who were murdered. Others were homes for regular non-famous people who only became famous for how they died. In some, the killers were much more famous before the murders than the victims. Not all the crimes were solved. For example, people still argue about whether Lizzie Borden hacked her parents to death with a hatchet. Not all killers were brought to justice. Many people have strong beliefs about who killed Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman, but no one was ever convicted for their murders. The Los Angeles Police Department famously announced it had no intention of looking any further for their killer. To them, the case was solved. Some of the murder houses have murkier histories. At least one famous murder house is on lists like these only because of a hoax. The legend surrounding the house was invented from thin air. We do not know who started it or why, but today people go and look at the house where no one was murdered because they have heard that people were killed there in a most spectacular and gruesome manner.